Hi, everyone. We're moving on to part 3 of talking about the personal statement as a part of your dietetic internship application. In case you haven't listened to parts 1 and 2, my name is Arlene Grant-Holcomb. I'm a recently retired DPD director from California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo, and I have very strong feelings about the importance of good advising and diverse advising through the process of the application. And so that's why I'm recording these short videos to add to any advising that you're getting from your DPD director and others that may be helping you along this path. So the next question that the application typically asks is, discuss experiences that have helped prepare you for your career. So I put in parentheses or in quotation marks there, helped prepare. If you think about that, that can mean a lot of different things. It can mean something like insight. It can actually teach you a transferable or academic skill. The academic skills typically come from things you learn in the classroom and in your labs. Transferable skills are things you might learn in a part-time job, working in a retail setting where you're learning about customer service or about flexibility or even about management. And then the third bullet I put is that it may help you to develop an appreciation or a sensitivity for something that is an important part of your preparation to become a dietetic intern and eventually a dietitian. So I included this picture of these vertical hydroponic gardens that were actually seen on a food service field trip that I took my students on recently in a local middle school where they have a central kitchen that prepares food for the district, but they also have a cafeteria. And though these gardens reside in the food production area, they are visible from the cafeteria. And so the director gave a really lovely explanation of how having these gardens and using, even though the amounts of fruit or vegetables that come from these gardens are very small, they've become a very important part of the nutrition education program that she offers to the students in the middle school. And so it was a very unique opportunity for my students to develop an appreciation for the importance of nutrition education that occurs in schools and how influencing children in a school is a wonderful way to reach an entire community. So something like that might fit into that category of developing an appreciation for or a sensitivity for something. And I'll elaborate more on those as we go along. Your experiences can be personal experiences, they can be academic experiences, they definitely can come from jobs that you've had that you get paid for, might have been or might be part-time jobs that you've had while a college student. They might also be from full-time experiences or per diem experiences that you've had as a diet tech, a degreed nutritionist, or really anything that you would do after college if you're taking a year or two to save money and prepare for a dietetic internship as you make up your mind about your future plans and goals. Experiences to help prepare you also can come from volunteer opportunities that you've had. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those as we go along. Personal experiences. Again, I've listed those that have come to mind and that I've had personal experience with applicants, but there could be obviously more from your own experience. You personally may have an illness, a disability, or may have had a death related to an illness or a disease in someone close to you. And that brings you very close to the medical community, to larger healthcare systems, and those things prepare you for the challenges that you face when you're working with people who are sick. If you've never worked with people who are sick, then sometimes facing serious illness, facing death, the possibility of death, is very stressful and very challenging. And so having walked through that with someone close to you is actually a part of your preparation and can be a benefit to you. You might have had your own personal medical challenges. And again, I mentioned that in the earlier video when we said those personal medical challenges may have inspired you to become a dietitian, may be a part of your motivation, but they also can teach you things about the healthcare system and about medical treatment that are also a part of your preparation. So keep in mind, there can be two different parts to the same experience. You may have also had experiences through athletics as a part. We can look at this two different ways also. Earlier, I talked about the influence that a coach or a team leader or an instructor may have had on you related to their specific nutrition advice or fitness advice that they've given. But also as an athlete, you learned a lot about teamwork and about the importance and the willingness to accept coaching. And so if you could think about your athletic experience in that way, that also very specifically helps prepare you for the next level. The fact that you're willing to be coached and that you can work as a part of a team with everyone contributing their unique strengths. So that's another possibility. The other thing that's very personal is the idea of time and or maturity. Some delay their education. You perhaps couldn't afford to go to college when you first graduated from high school, so you took a job to work and save money. You may have delayed it because you got married and started a family. That will cause a delay in your education. Sometimes people change careers. They earn a degree or get training in one particular area, and then along the way they discover nutrition and they go back to school to earn those DPD courses and get ready for a dietetic internship. That adds time to the time that what we might consider a typical undergrad. The student who starts college at 18 graduates when they're 22 or 23 and moves on into their professional next step professionally. Military service. There was a student in this picture who served in the military before they came to college. That also adds a very unique type of maturity and time to their journey, but military service also adds a tremendous number of transferable skills in terms of problem solving, critical thinking, leadership, teamwork. And so again, those are definite aspects of preparation that are worth noting. And then of course, if you paid your own way going through your education, that adds, it takes usually a little longer if you're paying your own way, and meaning that your parents didn't have the financial ability to pay your tuition or pay your living expenses while you were in college. And so usually the applicant who has paid their own way has had to work more. And so that also adds a significant level of time management and financial management to your effort, and definitely worth mentioning and thinking about. Plus the appreciation that you have for your education and where you're going and how you value that is a step above the student or the applicant who has had mom or dad, pay their way through school. So don't forget to give yourself credit for that if that's applicable in your particular situation. So here's an example from academics. Some of these are very obvious. Obviously, you learn things in the classroom that prepare you. In fact, hopefully everything in your DPD courses prepares you. You do case studies, you listen to lectures, you complete assignments, and you may also see specific examples from the instructor's own personal experience that give you knowledge, tools, and abilities to help prepare you. In addition to classroom work, You may go on field trips. I mentioned a field trip at the very beginning. Those things can offer certain types of preparation. And then there's experiential learning. At Cal Poly, where I taught, we call that learn by doing. That's the model of education. In some schools and in some programs, they'll call it practicum learning, meaning that it's not something you do in the classroom while listening to a lecture. It's something that you get up and out to do. You may go out to deliver a lesson in an education course to a group of senior citizens or to a group of school children. In my food service courses, we had lots of learn by doing experience when it came to standardizing recipes and preparing food for large numbers of people. And so those are good examples of, again, experiences that have helped prepare you for your career. So I'm going to explain the picture because it's related and yet not directly related to anything I just mentioned. In one of my food service courses, the quantity food production course, we prepare in the spring a large lunch for incoming students and their parents. We feed about 1,500 students and their parents through the work that my students do in class. And this particular year, we wanted to make a locally sourced fruit salad. And so we were picking blueberries. We had on our campus a blueberry patch, and the program director that was conducting the research on the blueberries said, you can have all you want, but you have to pick them yourself. And we thought that was a pretty good deal. So I asked for volunteers, for students who would like to come out and get lab credit for picking blueberries. So these 5 ladies all volunteered, and we spent a couple of hours out in the blueberry patch picking blueberries, and they showed us how to pick them and which ones were ripe and which ones weren't. And it was actually a lot of fun. But as we finished and we were combining all of our blueberries, one of the students shared very honestly that that was the first time that she had ever picked anything. It was the first time she had ever picked a piece of fruit off of a tree or a bush. She had never picked a tomato off a vine. She had never picked a lemon or an orange or an apple off of a tree. She had never picked anything. And in our area of California, it's pretty common for people to have a backyard garden or to go to U-Pick farms and pick strawberries or berries. And so that to me was a very useful and meaningful experience on 2 sides. One, the fact that she got a chance to get in the field and see where her food was coming from. But secondly, for the other students, it showed them that though they had all picked things before, that was not an assumption that they could make, that everyone that they might encounter knew food, knew where it came from. And so that was an example that one of those students was able to use much later as they were writing their personal statement. And so it shows, again, an insight into some of the experiences that clients and patients, students have had when it comes to interacting with their food. Paid work experience, of course, is also a great place to have experiences that help prepare you for your career. And I would imagine all of you have been advised to have paid work experience, either part-time during the months while you're in class, or maybe more hours during the summer months if you get a break. So paid work experience, very useful. It could be nutrition or food service related. It could be a DTR after graduation. That would actually be considered professional experience. But either way, whether you're working in a hospital, a senior nutrition program, a school, anything like that, if there are dietitians in place, that gives you an opportunity to directly observe elements of dietetics practice. And so that observation also gives you very practical insight and experience interfacing with registered dietitians. Even if there is not a dietitian in sight, even if you work at a Starbucks or the Gap or a McDonald's or an In-N-Out burger, all of those things are customer service related. So customer service is critically important in our profession. You can learn good customer service skills in any retail setting, in any restaurant, as a server. Definitely if you ever have worked as a bartender, and that's a popular job among our students and some of our students that go on to internship, because it's a job you can usually work Friday and Saturday nights and not have to work the rest of the week, and usually make enough money on tips to help keep your books balanced. Obviously, you have to be the appropriate age in the state where you live. And interestingly, as a bartender, the students who have done that have been able to speak directly to the legal and life safety responsibilities that come with that type of a job, which again is a level of responsibility that is above many of the other people that might be applying. And it shows that, again, demonstrates that level of responsibility in that applicant. The other thing that you learn when you have paid work experience and you're a student is you do learn time management. You learn about that balance between work and school responsibilities and life, staying in touch with your family and having time for your friends. It also helps you to learn budgeting and debt management. And each and every one of those things are experiences that actually have professional application moving forward. And so those, again, you won't have time to mention all of them, but what you'll want to do is consider and see which one might have the most impact as you write your personal statement. One or two might have the most impact. In the picture is one of our grads who was working summer at a diabetes camp here in California. And she was doing I happened to visit the camp while she was there and popped in while she was doing a lesson. And you can see she's talking about the plate and what composes the plate of someone with type 1 diabetes. And this was a class for children. And she learned a lot about modifying the level of teaching depending on the age of the child. And every camp session had a different age group. And so that was definitely something she was able to talk about. Additionally, as a volunteer, this would be truly volunteering out of the goodness of your heart, not something that's required by a class, although you may have heard about it through a class. You can definitely learn and have experiences that help prepare you. So the picture here, I'm not sure if you can tell from what it is, but they are small, divided, portion controlled plates that are used in our local senior nutrition program. They are stored in a freezer and they're used for the home delivered meals portion of our senior nutrition program. We go to this site on a field trip and many of the students learn about it. And the thing they like about our senior nutrition program for volunteering is that the kitchen manager says, you don't have to schedule a time to volunteer, just show up and we will put you to work. And students like that flexibility. They know they can go in, they know when they start in the morning, when they finish in the afternoon, and on a morning or an afternoon when they have time, they know to wear shoes, that they'll be given a hairnet and an apron, and all they have to do is show up and they'll be put to work, and they get some very meaningful volunteer experiences, whether it's how they use USDA commodity foods to stretch dollars, how they accommodate senior citizens that might be living alone or might be fed in congregate feeding sites. It's, again, a wonderful way to actually have experiences that are good preparation. Volunteer experiences really can fit in any category as well. If they're directly nutrition related, that's great. You can make clear connections, but don't minimize the importance of the volunteer work you might be doing for a club on your campus or outside of campus. You might be involved in your church with different kinds of volunteer service that, again, is contributing to many of the things we've already talked about. customer service, sensitivity for the needs of different groups, time management, communication skills. All of those are things that carry directly into your dietetic internship. And then there are also other nonprofits that are not directly nutrition related, like the Red Cross. And I'm sure there are many in your community. So think too about those opportunities. And think about all kinds of experiences. And then start adding those to your list. Then narrow down to one or two. Be sure to include something academic, and then maybe one or two other experiences that have helped prepare you for your career. I've written an example. I will read it out loud to you, and obviously you'll have this so you can look at it in more detail if you want the information that's here, if it's useful. But I call this a theory to practice example. It incorporates something that the applicant learned in the classroom, and then somehow where they saw this applied or relevant in an outside example. So this was an example of a group of our students who went to Malawi, which is a landlocked country in Africa, where one of our professors was extensively involved in a research project. And the instructor sent this photograph back of mealtime at the hospital where they were working. And I'm just going to read what I've written as a possible example. Again, this is not applicable to everyone, but this is what I mean by theory to practice. Participating in the Project Peanut Butter research in Malawi taught me so much about nutrition and food service. In classes, I learned about my plate and planning varied and balanced menus prepared and served using safe food handling principles. In Malawi, at the Queen's Hospital, the largest hospital in the country, the patients and sometimes their families were served a porridge made from a corn-soy blend, and only patients on high protein diets received meat, and only if there was enough. The same food was served every day, and there was no heat maintenance equipment or temperature taking. I learned how important it is to be resourceful and prioritize cleanliness and the use of available foods. That's, again, my words. The actual student who had this experience probably would have written about it differently. But I was trying to give you an example of how to incorporate a theory, which is the idea of my plate, varied menus, safe food handling practices. Those are all theories, with something very practical that she saw and what it meant in that setting. Now, I'm moving on to the next question, and I'm only going to say a little bit about this one. What are your short and long-term goals? This will probably be the shortest section of your personal statement. When you think short-term, think about the time immediately or soon after completing the internship. Keep in mind, everyone's short-term goal is to get into the internship. So you don't necessarily, that doesn't really add anything significant to your personal statement. Think about the time immediately after completion. And it might be something like entry-level practice or begin entry-level practice in an acute care hospital, or enter practice in a community nutrition setting like WIC, or something to that effect. Long-term, think 5 years or more out into the future. If you don't already have a master's or you are not applying to a combined program, I urge you to include in your long-term goals an MPH or an MS in the topic of your choice. Some other examples might be that I've seen from applicants in the past. A long-term goal is to complete a pediatric residency and practice in a pediatric oncology center. Another goal might be to become an international board-certified lactation consultant, or IBCLC, and open a private practice. Another example might be to become a certified diabetes educator. You might also have things like become fluent in Spanish, or become fluent in another language that would be important in the region where you hope to practice. And so I think that's about as much as I can say about short and long-term goals. It does not need to be very long. And keep in mind, this is not a contract. So if your plans change after you graduate, they're not going to chase you down and say, wait, you said you were going to get an MPH and now you're getting an MS. Don't worry about that. You still want to be truthful, have it be an honest, realistic goal. But if after you complete your internship, your goals change, and oftentimes they do, that's okay. This is really, the internship director is trying to see what your thinking is like. So continue to reflect on the things I've just shared with you. At this point, still don't worry about the word count. Keep brainstorming. If you like more structure, start drafting an outline. Otherwise, it can just be bullet points and phrases. You'll be able to trim, refine, and edit later. And most importantly, just get started. In the next video, I'll cover the last two questions, and I'll repeat again a little bit more about this idea of theory to practice. There's nowhere in the application that this is requested, but I've learned over the years as DPD director and from talking to program directors that when an applicant is able to make a practical application related to something that they've learned in class, program directors like that. They like to see that you're not just good in the classroom and taking exams and completing assignments, but that you can actually make those transfers of knowledge, do that critical thinking where you take a knowledge or a skill that you've learned in class and you actually can use it when you're faced with a new situation out in the field. So keep that in mind, and thank you so much, and I'll get back to you with the last video on this section very soon.